As part of Business Day's 40th anniversary special, Hilary Joffe has been tasked with looking at how the Sarb's inflation targeting policy has evolved. She reminds us that there was a time when the Reserve Bank made interest rate decisions without it, but all this changed 25 years ago when it became the anchor for monetary policy. Ndalen caught up with Hilary and asked her to walk us through how monetary policy moves were made before inflation targeting became the order of the day. Let's take a look.
Not so many South Africans remember a time when inflation was 21%, not 2% as it is today. But that was the peak that it reached not long after Business Day launched. A couple of months after Business Day started up in mid-1985, inflation hit 21% because the rand had crashed on P.W. Botha's Rubicon speech. So it's been a long road since then. And the other thing that not many South Africans remember, because we now take so for granted that there is an inflation target, are the days before 2000 when there wasn't an inflation target, and it was not very clear what monetary policy's target actually was. They used what they called an eclectic approach, which meant that one day where they could be targeting the exchange rate, the next day it was bank lending. It was a whole bunch of stuff. Inflation was in double digits through the 1980s. In the 1990s, it was actually brought down somehow using this kind of eclectic approach.
Was it a team of policymakers?
It wasn't a team.
Okay.
It was a person. It was the Reserve Bank governor, who at that point was Chris Stals. He sat at the top of the big black building in Pretoria, and he made interest rate decisions on a rather random basis. It could be a letter to the banks on a Friday afternoon.
Okay.
So that's what the other thing that South Africans don't remember is there wasn't a time when there was no television announcement of a monetary policy committee decision. There was no schedule. There was no committee. All of that came with inflation targeting, which was made policy in 2000, at which point Tito Mboweni, the late Tito Mboweni, had just taken over as governor. And as part of the targeting policy, a whole lot of things were instituted, which were becoming the global norm at the time. A committee, not just the governor, regular meetings, and most importantly, perhaps, transparency, not only on what the target actually was, but on how the committee reached its decision and what factors it took into account and what its forecasts actually were. So we've come to take all of that for granted, and the sort of openness with which the monetary policy makers go about their work, the monetary policy forums and all of that. But that really was a product of that inflation targeting of 25 years ago. It definitely was one of the big ingredients that helped to bring down inflation to the levels that we've become used to. Now, it was a long, hard road, and inflation didn't kind of get down quickly or easily, and there were a lot of bumps along the road. But it became more predictable. Interest rates became more predictable. That didn't in itself help economic growth, but it certainly was one of the bases for a more sustained, stronger economy.
Now, decades later, we still have the 3 to 6% inflation target in place. But in an attempt to rein in inflation even further, the Sarb then introduced that 4.5% midpoint. Let's talk about how that, how reaction was to that. In hindsight, did it work? I see that inflation is at 2% now.
Yes, we are quite lucky. It's not only the Reserve Bank's credibility and genius, which though that helps, but external factors have, and the kind of weak state of our economy, unfortunately, have helped. But yes, between 2000 and 2017, the target range was 3 to 6%. There was originally intentions to lower it, as the governor, Lisette Tshakganyago, always reminds us. The plan was, but they never did lower it. It stayed in that range, and it tended to hover at the top of the range. So on average, it was actually 6%. In 2017, the team said, no, this is high for an emerging market. It's quite a lot higher than a lot of other emerging markets, and certainly advanced economies who are targeting 2%. Quite quietly, the Reserve Bank said, okay, we're not really going to use the whole range, we're going to target the middle, 4.5. And they started communicating that. And in fact, in the next few years leading into COVID, inflation did actually come down into that 4% range. Partly luck, partly the Reserve Bank massaging expectations and very clearly communicating that it would work to get inflation to 4.5. So on the eve of COVID, it was 4.5. It had been even a little bit lower. Then COVID, you might remember, it went way low. Then after COVID, everyone in the world had a big problem with inflation. And now the Sarb, the Reserve Bank, is saying, look, 4.5 is not price stability. Price stability is when nobody even worries about prices going up. It doesn't factor into your decisions. Price stability is a lower level. And to be competitive, South Africa needs something closer to 3 than 4.5.
And he highlighted that at the Sarb meeting.
He has done that. So they've now gone pretty aggressive on saying we are campaigning for 3 and trying to get, I think, the Treasury and the Finance Minister on side, who really ought to co-sign any change to the target.
And that brings me to my next question then. Is it a done deal? As you mentioned, they are trying to get Treasury to co-sign the move. Recently, we heard from Deputy Finance Minister David Masondo saying that the Treasury will be announcing a move on inflation targeting very soon.
I think he rather did jump the gun, though the market loved it. The market's kind of hanging on every inflation targeting word. Yes, I don't think it is a done deal, but there are two kind of possible answers. The one is 3% is in the target, if you like. It's the bottom of the target. And in theory, there's nothing to stop the Sarb just going on its own. And when I asked at the 2 Monetary Policy Committee meetings ago, or one of them, can you go it alone? The governor said, yes, of course we can go alone, but we wouldn't, because you want government on side. So I think the market, a lot of people in the market think they are sort of making decisions based on 3%, not 4.5, and they have started publishing scenarios showing what they would decide if it were 3. But that's part of the campaign to try to persuade everyone, but particularly Treasury, that actually you could get to 3 at this very low inflation stage without too much of a sacrifice in terms of growth or employment. And it's that window of like 2-3% inflation that the Reserve Bank is really trying to capture. So the other answer is yes, it really is a policy move that should be decided jointly by the Finance Minister and the Reserve Bank Governor. And I think that is what the bank is really trying to get to. And the hope is that in the medium-term budget, the Finance Minister will announce a new target. The Treasury is doing its own modelling, and we will see. I don't think it's yet a done deal.
That was Editor-at-Large of Business Day, Hilary Joffe.